But thanks very much for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be among fellow volunteers. It's a tremendous act that you do. So I'm a registered psychologist here in Ontario. I've been practicing in Barrie as a psychologist for 25 plus years. So what I hope to achieve this morning, a couple of things. One, just a very quick introduction to who is homeless, what their challenges are. And certainly if you have been doing this for a while, I am sure you are certainly aware of the challenges that the homeless face in the community and sort of personally as you greet them through your doors at the church. The bulk of today's session, however, will be how to communicate and how to negotiate, how to resolve conflicts that I presume arise fairly frequently. My intention and hope is that we take a bit of a look at communication skills, how we resolve the conflict, do some scenarios so that you can actually practice those things. So who are homeless in Barrie? And so there's a large number, 7,500 people are homeless, but not actively seeking help per se. And the help may be through shelters like yours. It could be actually seeking medical attention, going to the emergency department of the hospitals. Mostly are single men between the ages of 25 to 55. There are approximately as well 2,500 women who are seeking some sort of support. And I know from my own private practice and sort of experience working in the field that you often see teenagers as well, for whatever reason, have left home and are couch surfing, staying in relatives, friends' homes, or unfortunately on the street, in abandoned homes, abandoned fields, abandoned what have you. And that obviously is a cause for great distress. In 2009, approximately 400 women sought shelter at night. So what are the needs? And the needs of the homeless are just like our needs. They are no different, except that perhaps we have more available resources to actually obtain those needs. And so the needs, I'm sort of starting at the top, the need for connection, the need to bond with somebody, the need to affiliate, the need for respect, the need for purpose. What is their purpose in life? A sense of worth, a sense of competence, a sense of well-being, a sense of I am able to do things in life that make me feel fairly good about myself. Security. Everyone in here, I presume, has a roof over their head, right? Everyone knows where you're going to be sleeping tonight. Everyone, to a degree, feels relatively safe. And by that, not only do I mean physical safety, but I also mean emotional safety. Okay. And emotional safety obviously plays a huge role as well in terms of how we approach people, in terms of how we seek out things from others, how we protect ourselves. And we get a bit into that a little later on. Autonomy. I'm in control of my life. I can dictate the path, the direction in which I want to go and live my life. I have a sense of independence. And the last one obviously is also crucial, the physical needs. Right? We have been talking mostly about psychological needs, but obviously the physical needs are there as well. So within that context, and again, these challenges are just not what the homeless face. I think they're challenges for all of us, but they're heightened because they are homeless and don't have as many resources as we may. So the challenges may range from mental health, which is huge, right, to social isolation, low self-esteem, medical issues, physical pain, and substance use. Any one of those, obviously, is a huge challenge. You add another one, or another two, or three, or four, or five, and you start thinking it's insurmountable. And what's the point of even putting one foot in front of the other? And so how do people actually, faced with these challenges, come to your door and say, here I am, I'm in need of help, or I'm in need of shelter for the night, I'm in need of food for the night. How do these people, and I hate sort of saying these people, It sounds somewhat biased, somewhat, I'm not quite sure, but it sounds as if I am putting them over here and putting ourselves here. But how do they come? How do they present themselves? And more importantly, how do we interpret their presentation of themselves? So I alluded to mental health, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time kind of on that. And again, these challenges we aren't immune from them. In our existence, we have probably felt at some point depressed, anxious, sad, scared. We've been sort of traumatized to some small degree, or maybe even to a large degree. Right? We may even have dabbled with some substance use or abuse, depending on the extent. And for those, there might have been sort of what we call a co-occurrence, in that we have a mental health challenge as well as a substance use challenge. The statistics indicate that the homeless often have a mental health challenge and a substance use challenge. So again, when you think of challenges and the ability to cope with them, right? Again, I think we're all faced with that daunting task of how do we manage these very difficult situations. I'm going to take some time just to go through anxiety with you. Gary was indicating to me that this is one of the most perhaps prevalent things that your guest may experience. I would also hazard a guess that this plus many other of the mental health challenges would also be present. And as you know, anxiety, like depression or even trauma sometimes, it's invisible to a large extent. When you look at anxiety from a psychological point of view, it sort of embodies every part of us. There's not one part of our being that is not affected by anxiety. And from the tops of our heads to the bottom of our souls, we are affected by anxiety. So starting with our thoughts, okay, there's a certain associated thought, right, that is prevalent when we are anxious. There are associated moods, physical reactions, and then behavior. And when we have anxious thoughts, and then just to kind of put it in the context of your volunteer work with Out of the Cold, when you have an anxious thought, it goes something like this. There is an event or a situation, and that situation I'm interpreting as highly dangerous, highly threatening. Right? So in essence, I'm overestimating the threat or the potential threat that I perceive in that situation. And I couple that with, I can't manage. I don't have the skills. What do I do? Okay. So we have that thinking that says it's fairly negative, I can't manage, it's difficult, it's dangerous. And alongside that, we have then these catastrophic thoughts. The worst thing is going to happen. Right? The worst thing. I come through these doors at night, and there are people I don't know, and what are they going to do with me or to me? What are they going to say? Right? How will they treat me? What if? And so there's a cascade of potential thoughts that leads to, people then potentially just going to behavior for a bit, potentially avoiding situations, avoiding people, being by themselves, sitting alone perhaps in the room, not wanting to talk to others, being afraid to do so. You might see people physically pacing, fidgeting, sweating, right? Symptoms vary or signs vary. So it's a bit difficult at times to distinguish things. And then, of course, you have that internal interpretation of all of these things. Yes, I'm anxious. Yes, I'm scared. Yes, right? I'm afraid. So again, we have this kind of whole body experience, really, of anxiety. I just want to take us through just a little bit of trauma, and then we will sort of get into the next segment, which is kind of why you're here this morning. And because I see trauma often, and again, it's one of those very invisible things, invisible disorders, if you want to call it, or this invisible responses. I think it's important that at least you're familiar with some signs. So with trauma, and that can range from witnessing an event to actually experiencing the event, okay? You may have what's called dissociation, whereby there's this sort of blankness that overcomes, that you're sort of staring into space, and in essence you have just removed yourself from the situation. And an example I like to, which is familiar to most people, you're driving up the 400, as I've so often done, and most of you have, and next thing you know, you were sort of at that exit 89, and all of a sudden, where am I? It's like, I've traveled how many kilometers, and I have no recollection of how I did that. Okay, so I have temporarily dissociated. Okay. And that's a dangerous thing. Obviously, when you're driving, it's highly dangerous. For people who have been traumatized, there's a sense of protection. And again, whether you're feeling anxious or whether you've been traumatized, the need at that point is to protect oneself from further danger. And dissociation, in essence, kind of does that. The other piece about it is that because we have been traumatized, there is that sense of being very vigilant of our surroundings and the people in the surroundings. So again, it's the thinking, I've been hurt or I've experienced something really bad. Is it going to happen again? Right? Will it happen again? So there's this sort of constant, sort of 360 in a sense, vigilance happening. And because of that, sometimes we are easily startled or we're jumpy when people have been traumatized. There might be flashbacks or memory of the event that may, which may then produce an agitated state in guests if they have been traumatized. And that easily triggered by objects, events, location, people, smells, whatever, triggered by those things that remind us of the event. So as you see guests coming in and you really don't know them as well as they don't know you, it would be useful to keep in mind that it's highly likely that these events may have occurred. Right? And then the question is, how do we then approach? How do we connect? How do we interact with people? Okay. And just to kind of close off this section, the interpersonal challenges then that you probably will face if there are these challenges that people are having. The first one is trust. Right? Again, how do I know that any one of you will treat me well? You say you will, you look like nice people, but how do I know that you will treat me well? Good question. There's potential to have a difficulty managing your moods. Irritability is a great one. Right? Sort of heightened irritability can lead to rage, moodiness, being up and down. There might be cognitive issues, and that can stem from either sort of substance abuse, anxiety, depression, whereby you're having difficulty following even a simple conversation. You're having difficulty trying to understand, reason, right, and answer appropriately, make good decisions about things. And also, there might be what's called kind of behavioral disinhibition. Like, okay, I can do whatever I want. I can shout, I can swear. Sort of the norms then don't apply to me. And I have trouble kind of reining that in. Okay? So there might be impulsivity, there might be what have you. Okay, so we're into the meat of the matter. Nonviolent communication. Yes. So we're going to go through that process a little bit, and I also want to add some soft but crucial skills as well. And there are four aspects really to it. Kind of what we observe, what we are feeling, what we need from that situation, and how do we express the request of what we want from that situation and from the other person. When I see X, I feel Y. So observations. Observations need to be concrete and specific. Right? And we know from our own experience interacting with others, if you give me a vague kind of observation, I'll go, oh, sorry, what? Place the knife where? Right? It's too vague. Observations also should not contain an evaluation or judgment. So I'm going to go through some examples just for us to practice observing. So, you can shout yes, shout no. Last night, John paced the hallway. Is the observation concrete and specific enough? Yeah, I would say so. Pace the hallway. You can see it, right? It's concrete. Sue was first in line for dinner. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Henry is a good man.
No.
No. Too vague. And
That's not concrete.
yeah. What does good mean? And to whom? Sue was angry with me yesterday for no reason.
No.
So how would you improve that one then? So Steve was angry with me, and he showed it by what he said, X, Y, and Z, by his expression, and he stated whatever, right? Okay. So that one is sort of half right, but could do with a major improvement in terms of how concrete and specific we need to be. Mary often arrives late at the center. Okay, so I have what's often, what's late. Who would like to elaborate on what's often and what's late? How would you improve that? So you'd quantify it by, yes, every Tuesday she arrives late, or every time, whatever, right? So there's a bit more quantification of that, being a bit more specific. Great. And so if I say right now, good job to you, is that an observation? And is that a great observation, or is that just too vague? It's a bit too vague. And you know what that also does, and we do that all the time. I do it all the time. There's also an evaluative judgment about that, is that I can say to you, because I know what's good and what's not good, that was good. Feelings. Okay, so that was observations. And let's turn to feelings. I often hear, sort of feelings mixed up with thoughts. I feel as if I should have gone yesterday to the gym. Well, yes, you said the word feeling, but it's not really a feeling. It's an action that you felt sorry about, that you were disappointed in yourself about, but it's more a thought. Okay. So some of these ways in which we mix up feelings and thoughts, I feel as if you should know the rules better. Right? That is more thought. I think you should know the rules better. Again, I may feel disappointed that you don't. I may feel angry that you don't, whatever it might be. I may be shocked that you don't. I feel as if I'm talking to a wall, same idea. I feel it's hopeless. Now that gets a bit more into what I'm feeling. I feel hopeless about the situation. I feel Jack is being manipulative. What about that one? Yeah, it's an observation but that needs to be a bit specific. Yeah, okay. And the second point is the difference between what we feel versus what we think we are, or what we think others are doing to us. So on the left-hand side, I feel ignored, okay, versus I feel hurt because I was ignored, okay. So in the first instance, I feel ignored. About what? Right? It's something that you're doing to me. But how do I feel about what you're doing to me? I feel angry, maybe, right? I feel hurt. The second one, I feel misunderstood versus I feel annoyed or anxious. And the last, I feel inadequate versus I feel disappointed in myself. So many of us often kind of lack this vocabulary because A, we are not sort of taught the vocabulary, the feelings vocabulary that is. Okay. We don't have the role models in which who say to us, this is a feeling. Right? What are you feeling? Okay. So being in tune with our feelings is something that we all need practice in, I believe. Needs. Dr. Rosenberg's definition of a need, right, whether it be physical or psychological, is it has no reference to anyone really doing anything in particular. It's what do I need, okay? The request later may be I need this and I need you to do this therefore, and that's the request, when I make a request of you. So a request is different really from a need. What needs do you think you have for the shelter when you're working there? What are your needs?
Safety.
Safety, security would be high on the list. Okay.
I need supplies to work with.
Okay. You need resources.
Competent people.
You need guidance. Okay. Steve says competent people, but what does that mean for you? If you don't have competent people, what might be the outcome?
Unsafe environment.
A so you need safety, right? So you need the food, right? You need a place that operates well. There's heat, right? What have you? There's water, etc., etc. You need safety in that environment. Good leadership. Okay. Okay, this is a bit of a needs exercise to help us kind of figure out what's being expressed here, if a need is being expressed. So the first one says, I feel disappointed because you said you would do it and you didn't. Was a need expressed there? So what is a person's need? When I say, you said you're going to do it and you didn't do it.
Reliability.
I need reliability, yeah. I need to depend on you, right? And when you say you don't do it, then I feel X, Y, and Z. Right? Okay. I feel frustrated when you come late to the shelter, late to bring the potatoes.
Lack of communication.
Yeah, lack of communication. So I feel frustrated when you come later and you don't communicate. Anything else? Is there a need that's expressed? I need you to be on time. Again, reliability. I need you to be on time, right? I feel worried when you raise your voice. Okay. So yeah, the unmet need for safety, right, or the unexpressed need for safety isn't there. So a better response or a better statement could be, I feel worried when you raise your voice because I'm in need of feeling safe, or the guests, everyone in the setting need to feel safe, and I'm worried what that might lead to when you raise your voice.
Intimidation.
Okay, yeah. And the last, I'm angry when you say that because I deserve respect. I would say a need has been stated. Maybe deserve could be harsh. But you have stated, I deserve respect. I need respect from you. That's what I need. I need to be respected. Right? When you raise your voice at me, I don't feel respected. I need respect. So after we have sort of observed the situation, we have thought about what the feeling is that we have, then we express that need, and then we express a request that hopefully presents a strategy or a solution to the situation. Okay. So again, to be clear, a request is not a demand, because we all know what happens when our requests are interpreted or even presented as a demand. The automatic human response is a resounding no. No, I will not. Right? The request, again, has to be clear and it has to be specific. It cannot be vague. Right? You need to know what you would like from the other person in order to give the request. Right? And so you need to think ahead of time as to what you want. And the specific actions that you will request, right, that people may take, should be in the form of an action verb. What you can see, what you can hear. Right? So, for instance, I want you to be quiet. That's unclear. I understand what you say. You want me to be quiet. What does that mean? Do you want me to just sit down but continue to shout? I can do that. Okay. And again, and focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. And that may seem almost trivial to say it out loud, or to even put it up on a slide like this. But believe me, it's terribly important to focus on what you want. Right? You can say, I don't want you to do that, I don't want you to do this, and the person is still left going, well, what am I supposed to do then still? Yeah, what am I supposed to do? You haven't said what you want, so I can go and sort of throw something over here. You didn't say that. Okay, so a bit of a summary then. So we observe the situation, express feelings, state need, make a request, listen to others' feelings and need. So in this as well, there is an interaction. It's not merely that you are doing something to somebody else. There is an interaction between you and your colleague at work, the guest who presents at the door. And it's your skill, in a sense, of making it happen in a way that both sides feel heard and respected, and you come to an agreement about what is the best solution for the situation. So again, you need to demonstrate what I call active listening. I can tell that you have been listening actively because I see you nodding, I see you looking at me, I see you engaged. Okay. If we listen to each other, then we should be able to say back, right? I can say back to Steve what you've just said, to Gareth what you've just said. Okay. Active listening does not mean I am sort of caught up in this sort of my own thinking and thinking ahead 2 steps like a chess game as to what my next statement will be. Because in the meantime, you've just missed, right, a few seconds of what the person is saying to you. Which is a difficult thing to do because in a situation in which there is potential threat, you do need to think 2 steps ahead. So the question for you becomes, how do I think 2 steps ahead, yet stay in the moment? And that can be difficult for sure. Offer empathy. Again, it's listening to the other person's needs and feelings. I like the one that says, don't put a but in the face of an angry person because you just get a but back. Adopt positive verbal and non-verbal language. And the last one that I want to spend just a minute and a half on, and again I think it's crucial, is to be aware of yourself. Be aware of your own tendencies, your own response patterns, what triggers you, right? Where your vulnerabilities are, where your experiences are, because then that's how you respond. And so we need to know, right, our own self the best before we can sort of engage with another person. Okay, just very quickly, actions speak louder than words. Even though we are in a very talkative society, still that non-verbal communication, right, is interpreted, acted on. Right? So be aware of your guests' body language, be aware of your own voice, facial expression. Are you smiling? Are you greeting people pleasantly? Or are you frowning? And so often people actually don't know what their facial expression is like. Okay, some non-verbal language do's. And again, it's especially important. So if I come this close to, sorry, you don't have it. If I come this close to Peter, put my hand on her shoulder. And I don't know Peter from Gareth. Well, I know Gareth actually. bad example. Some people in some cultures are very comfortable with very intimate sort of space, right? In our culture, that distance between us is a bit greater. And individually, that distance between us may also be even greater, depending on our experience, or appropriate, or even nearer, right? So again, the step A would be to judge, like know who you are, what your personal kind of space limit is, and then use that with others. And people will tell you, if I get too close to Peter, what will be her first response? Yeah, she will take that and do this, and take a look at me and go, what are you doing right now? Okay. So again, posture is important, whether you're standing kind of erect. Right? If I slump over and I'm speaking to somebody like this, it conveys a much different sort of expression, sentiment, than if I stand erect, right, and look at each other. And again, there's subtleties to all of this. If I hold Steve's gaze for a minute longer than he likes, he's going to turn away from me, right, and avoid or avert his gaze. Okay, so make eye contact, but don't let it appear threatening, relaxed brow, etc. Voice. The one thing I would like out of this, because I would believe that you do most of it, is to be concise, the middle one. Again, depending on our own nature, whether we are talkative, voluble people, or whether we revert to fairly short sentences, regardless of our own innate tendencies. I think in situations in which you're dealing with people who might be anxious, traumatized, depressed, or what have you, the ability to sustain attention for any length of time is diminished. I would take that as a given in a sense. Right? And be fairly concise. Right? Use vocabulary that most people would understand, right, and respond to. And there's always a feedback, a check back about, I'm not quite sure whether you got that, sorry, was I clear? Right? So you would ask for some feedback about that. Okay. So we have kind of this normal distributed bell curve looking thing. And it goes from on one side where we have logical thinking, where people are calm in a fairly great state, and we go up one side and down the other side. And on one side we have agitation, anxiety. You may see people pacing, being a bit restless, to increased hostility, to really vented rage, and then back down the other side, right, to more logical thinking. And when we get to rage, as we may have experienced, it's extremely difficult to reason in a sense with a lot of people, right, because their ability to reason with you, right, kind of gets diminished. So my thinking would be that, especially on that side of the hill, that nonverbal communication probably works really well for the majority of individuals if you can engage. But what would you do with the rage piece? What would be sort of the go-to for you if the situation becomes really, really dangerous? Would it be 911? Would that be what would be your go-to? I guess that's the one question. What is your role as the host? What is your kind of limit of responsibility? And what, and Gary can speak much, better, and you can as well too. Where does your responsibility end and somebody else's begin? Would that be kind of appropriate to phrase it that way, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, our goal, broadly speaking, is to prevent any situation getting to the rage stage. And that happens by first screening out particularly problematic guests. That's part of what central intake is looking for. If there's a guest that's clearly having a very bad night, he shouldn't be sent to our shelter to begin with. So that's at the very beginning of the process. We would screen out, obviously, challenging guests. And we have a suspension program, in fact, we use from time to time, where a guest is actually not allowed to come into the shelter for a period of time. But everything else we'd be doing would be on the left-hand side of the equation. We don't want you actually to come between guests. You're not trained to, you're not equipped to, and it's only very rarely happened. In my 8 years with Bear the Cold volunteering, it's happened in one instance where I had two guests seriously go at each other. In that particular instance, the police were called immediately, but even before the police were called, backing up several steps, those guests were observed. There was the beginnings of a problem, they were talked to, and they were warned. In fact, in that instance, a volunteer who had some training did physically get between the guests. That was a one-off because that volunteer had specific training to do that. The situation immediately de-escalated. But our whole focus here is to avoid getting to rage through observation, vigilance, interaction, and if and then it gets to that, it's 911. And now your focus is on safety of the rest of the shelter, safety of volunteers, clear exits, for example, separation of other guests away from that area. That's what we would focus.
Thank you. So we're on to scenarios. So we're going to do scenario 1. So just to set up the scenario. So Sarah, okay, Gary. He looks like a much better Gary than a Sarah, perhaps, is asking for an extra helping of food when receiving her first helping. She starts to shout and swear when told no, and that she has to wait until all the guests are served. Okay, so there you go. So I'm the host. Yes, Sarah, I heard you wanted a second serving of food now?
Yeah, all I wanted was some more potato, and she said I had to wait. But you've got so much goddamn food, and there's only a few of us here tonight. Why can't I have some more damn food right now?
You know the rules, Sarah. Sorry, I need you to wait until everyone gets their food.
Oh, come on, what's a little bit more potato? You'd think I was asking for all of it.
Sarah, I need you to quiet down and move along because people are waiting behind you.
You think you're so high and mighty. All I'm asking for is a little bit more potato.
Okay, Sarah. Okay. So we can envision that scenario going on for a while, okay? That Sarah's starting to raise her voice. I'm a bit indecisive. I've approached, I've even touched Sarah. She begins to and I back off. And we're at, okay, so what to do now? So let's just go down the list a little bit. Have I made an observation of what she's doing? No, not really. Have I expressed a feeling at all about my own concerns? Have I expressed a need?
Yes.
I've expressed a need. Well, I've asked her to do something. I've said, please move along because people are waiting behind you. So I've expressed a strategy, and she's not paying any attention to me, really. She's still concerned about her food. So in a way, how would you say this might unravel for you? Because I don't think it's going really well.
Okay, so you've heard the scenario. What do you think the shift team involved should do next? You may want to pause this video, consider your answer, and then compare it to what the group comes up with.
So if at this point I said to Sarah, it really sounds as if you're hungry and you really need an extra helping, what might your response be to that?
Just kind of explain what you're going through. I've been walking all day kind of deal, or, you know, like I'm hungry, I see you have the food, I don't understand why I can't have it.
Okay, so all of a sudden, in a sense, I've connected with your need, right? And you're really hungry, and then I can add something like, yeah, it must be really awful to be going hungry all day. I can really understand, you know, your need for a second serving. What I need is for everyone to be served first, you know. Then I go into my request. Can you wait? You know, is that okay? Do you understand sort of the need that I have for everyone to be served first, so it's fair for everybody?
No. What about if she says, no, I can't wait?
Okay, let's go.
I've had them.
Yes, let's go. Okay, so no, I can't wait. And so, Sarah, what will be the issue right now if you can't wait? What?
I would have suggested that you tell her to finish what's on her plate.
Okay.
And then come back and we'll see what...
Okay. So a suggestion, how about if you finish what's on your plate and we'll come back, right, and wait.
There's lots here. We understand there's lots here, but we're going to feed everybody first. There's also dessert to have, and if you're still hungry, there's still lots here. But, you know,
Yeah.
that's where we stand, and, you know, and you stay calm with them, but firm.
Calm
Firm.
with,
You know, and you don't try to escalate by trying to outshout them, you know, or getting madder than they already are.
okay, so staying calm, giving a reassurance that there is food, that there can be another serving, right? There's lots of food, as you said. But I think certainly if there is an attempt to connect and understand where the other person is coming from, because basically what we all want in life is to be heard, to be understood, to know that you are listening to my needs, that you respect my needs, and that if you provide that to me, right, at least some respect and understanding, well, okay, I can provide you with my waiting. Okay, so that's the trade-off in essence.
And I think it's important we don't overreact. You know, we all of our guests at some point have a bad day and swear, and persistent abusive language we can't accept. But I would not dump on her the first time. I would suggest instead it's the approach that we're talking about. You know, can I talk to you? Can we move this outside the food line? And I just want to find out what might be happening here, Sarah. But I think we want to be gentle but firm on the sense that what's she doing, how is it affecting other guests, and the food distribution. We cannot have her jam that up too long, yeah? Because that gets 30 people upset. And they will be down on her as faster than you will. So we need to be intervening appropriately, if you will, pulling her into a conversation ideally that then can get to the heart of what's really bothering her. And I think we'll find most times it's not the food. And again, remember, ideally, I know this is the world doesn't always work this way, is that we've already been watching Sarah. You know, she's clearly been having some challenges before, and ideally we've already had that chat with her to say, Sarah, you seem to be a bit anxious today. Do you want to talk about it? Are you okay? You know, what was happening today? And so hopefully we've already made the connection, but occasionally we miss it, or she blows up unexpectedly. But if we're really on our game, you know, if we're vigilant, most times you see this stuff coming, don't you?
Rightly or wrongly, I would probably turn around and say, oh, you know what, Sarah, some of the potatoes did get stuck on the spoon. And it may be just a matter of you've just given her a tablespoon extra or whatever, and then she would more than likely move on, and later I would have a conversation with her, because I know the guests are going to interject.
These are excellent points, and it gets back to that number one guest concern of consistency, right?
Yeah.
So if we're consistent, portion size, when seconds are served, how we handle food distribution, then it's very hard for the guest to see it as being unfair, because that's just the way it's been every night kind of thing. And when a guest is truly having a bad day, we need to find a way to intervene and probably pull them aside, and in a positive but clear manner sort of seek to help them understand that this is the way it is. We're happy to hear your thoughts and concerns. But eventually this kind of conversation, as many of you know, goes to something like, Sarah, I hear you. Your seconds are available in 20 minutes. Help us have a calm shelter tonight. I really need you to lower your voice and to stop swearing so that we can all have a great night tonight. Do you agree? Sarah, can we do that? And if she's still on that path of hostility, then it's, well, Sarah, you won't be able to stay with us tonight if you continue to swear and act in this manner.
So that was some of the discussion that happened in our session on November 12th, and perhaps you've had some ideas as well, some similar, some different to what we discussed as a group. But I hope you found this whole session interesting, and we're grateful to Dr. Maing for her time in helping us put it together. Just a reminder that we have an online quiz that we'd like all leaders and volunteers to complete before the start of the season, certainly before your first shift, as it helps reinforce certain safety and guest interaction procedures. And it just remains for me to thank you for volunteering this season, and we wish you a happy and productive experience. Thank you on behalf of the Board of Directors for being Barrie Out of the Cold.